The emergency room was chaos. It was a typical Friday night at Metropolitan Hospital. I was in my second year as a trauma nurse, still getting used to the adrenaline, the blood, and the constant flow of critical patients who needed immediate care. Female, approximately 8 years old. Gunshot wound to the chest, massive internal bleeding. The paramedic rattled it off as they wheeled in the gurney. Found at the scene of a drive-by shooting. No ID. No family present. She's coding. The little girl on the stretcher was pale, small, and covered in blood. Dr. Martinez immediately started barking orders while I established IV access. My hands moved with practiced efficiency, despite my racing heart. Pediatric traumas were always the hardest. "She's saying something," one of the other nurses said. "I can't understand. Is that Italian?" The girl's lips were moving, barely audible words coming out between gasping breaths. I leaned closer, and my heart stopped. She was speaking Italian. Rapid, terrified Italian that I recognized from my childhood. My grandmother had been Italian, and had raised me speaking both English and Italian until I was 10. I hadn't used the language much since she died, but I understood every word this little girl was saying. "Per favore, di a papà che mi dispiace. Non volevo. I fiori erano così belli. Please, tell Papa I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. The flowers were so beautiful." "What's she saying?" Dr. Martinez asked, his hands moving quickly to try to stop the bleeding. "Can anyone understand her?" "She's speaking Italian," I said, moving closer to the girl's head. "She's apologizing to her father about flowers." The girl's eyes found mine. They were dark, frightened, and filled with pain. "Per favore, digli che lo amo." "Please, tell him I love him." "She wants her father," I translated, my voice breaking. "She's trying to tell him she loves him. Where the hell is her family?" Dr. Martinez demanded. "Someone find out who this kid is and get her parents here now." But even as he said it, we all knew. The monitors were screaming. Her blood pressure was dropping. We were losing her. I took the little girl's hand, squeezing gently. "Sto qui con te," I said in Italian. "I'm here with you. Non sei sola. You're not alone." Her eyes focused on me with desperate intensity. "Di a papà. La rosa era per la mamma. Volevo metterla sulla sua tomba. Tell Papa the rose was for Mama. I wanted to put it on her grave." She'd been picking flowers for her mother's grave. That's what she was trying to tell her father. That's what she wanted him to know. "Lo dirò," I promised, tears streaming down my face. "I'll tell him. Lo saprà. He'll know." "Nurse Carter, I need you focused," Dr. Martinez started, but then the monitors flatlined. The steady beat became one long tone. We worked for 20 minutes trying to revive her. Chest compressions, defibrillation, every drug protocol we had. But she was too small, had lost too much blood, and had been shot in exactly the wrong place. Sometimes, despite everything we do, death wins. "Time of death, 9:47 p.m., Dr. Martinez said quietly, stepping back from the table. The ER went silent in that moment of respect we always gave, even in the chaos. A child had died. Nothing felt more wrong than that. I stayed with her body after the others left, unable to let go of her small, cold hand. She died, scared and alone, trying to tell her father she loved him, trying to explain about flowers for her mother's grave. And he wasn't here. He'd never get to hear her last words. "We need to prepare her for the morgue," one of the other nurses said gently. "Elena, you need to let go." Elena, my grandmother's name. The name I'd been named after but never used, preferring Elena Carter to feel more American in school. Eventually, I just started going by Carter professionally, to avoid the emotional connection to my grandmother's memory. But this little girl's last words, spoken in my grandmother's language, had pulled me right back to that part of my identity I'd tried to distance myself from. I finally released her hand and stepped away, letting the team do what needed to be done. In the staff room, I washed my face, trying to compose myself before heading back to the floor. Crying after losing a patient was normal, but we couldn't let it stop us. There were other patients, other emergencies, other lives to try to save. "Carter, there's a man here asking about the little girl. The charge nurse found me 20 minutes later. Says she might be his daughter. Can you talk to him?" You're the only one who understood what she was saying. The man waiting in the family consultation room was not what I expected. He was probably in his mid-30s, tall and powerfully built, with dark hair and sharp features that might have been handsome if they weren't currently twisted with barely controlled panic. He wore an expensive suit, had the kind of presence that commanded attention, and was surrounded by 3 equally well-dressed men who looked more like security than friends. "Mr. Romano," I said, using the name the charge nurse had given me. "I'm Elena Carter. I'm the nurse who was with your daughter when she..." Is she alive? His voice was rough and accented. They won't tell me anything. Just that there was a little girl, Italian, approximately 8 years old. Please, is she? I'm so sorry. We did everything we could, but her injuries were too severe. She didn't make it. The devastation that crossed his face was absolute. He staggered, and one of his men caught him. For a moment, I thought he might collapse. Then he straightened, his expression hardening into something cold and dangerous. I want to see her. I need to confirm it's her. I need to see her. Of course. But Mr. Romano, before you do, she said something at the end. She was speaking Italian, and I understood her. I think you need to know what she said. His dark eyes focused on me with laser intensity. You speak Italian? My grandmother was from Naples. She raised me bilingual. Your daughter, she was trying to tell you something important. Tell me everything. Every word she said. I took a breath, steadying myself. She was apologizing. She said, "Tell Papa I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. The flowers were so beautiful." Then she said she loved you. And at the very end, she said, "Tell Papa the rose was for Mama. I wanted to put it on her grave." Mr. Romano closed his eyes, and I saw him physically fighting for control. The cemetery. She wanted to visit her mother's grave. I told her no. It was too dangerous, that we'd go this weekend. She must have gone anyway, picked flowers to bring to her mother. And his voice broke. They killed her because she was my daughter, because of who I am. I'm so sorry for your loss, I said quietly. She wasn't alone at the end. I held her hand and talked to her in Italian. She knew someone was there who understood her. You were with her. You heard her last words. You. He opened his eyes, and there was something fierce in his expression now. What's your full name? Elena Maria Carter. Elena Maria, he repeated. An Italian name. Carter is your father's name? Yes, my mother was Italian-American, but my father's family was Irish-American. I grew up with both cultures. One of the men with Mr. Romano stepped forward and whispered something urgent in Italian. I caught enough to understand. Boss, we need to leave. This place is insecure. The hit was meant for you. They might try again. Boss. The way he said it. The way the other men deferred to him, this wasn't just a grieving father. This was someone with power, with people who answered to him, with enemies who'd killed his daughter to hurt him. Take me to her, Mr. Romano said to me, and then you're coming with us. I'm sorry, what? You speak Italian. You understood my daughter's last words. You were with her when she died. His expression was intense, almost desperate. I need you to tell me everything. Every detail, every word, every expression on her face. You're the last person who saw her alive. You're coming home with me so I can hear it all. Mr. Romano, I can't just leave the hospital in the middle of my shift. Yes, you can. I'll handle it. I'll handle everything. But you're coming with me. Now. There was something in his voice. Not a threat exactly, but an absolute certainty that this was happening whether I agreed or not. I looked at the men with him, noting their bodyguard-like positioning. They wore expensive suits, projecting a dangerous edge. Given their presence and demeanor, I realized immediately that this was not a request I could refuse. Let me talk to my supervisor. Give me 5 minutes. I found Dr. Martinez and explained the situation, that the girl's father wanted more details, and that he was asking me to leave with him. Dr. Martinez's expression darkened. Carter, that man is Luca Romano. Do you know who that is? Should I? He runs one of the largest organized crime families in New York. He's dangerous, possibly violent, and definitely not someone you want to be alone with. His daughter just died in my arms. He wants to know her last words, her last moments. I can't refuse that. What kind of nurse would I be? The kind that stays alive by avoiding mafia bosses. But Dr. Martinez sighed. If you're determined to do this, take someone with you. Don't go alone. I'll be fine. He just wants information about his daughter. He's grieving, not dangerous. That was naive of me, in retrospect. But at the time, all I could see was a father who'd lost his child and wanted to understand her final moments. How could I deny him that? After Luca viewed his daughter's body, a moment so painful I had to step out of the room to give him privacy, he collected himself and turned to me with redrimmed eyes. Her name was Julia. She was 8 years old. She loved flowers, reading, and annoying her older brother. She wanted to be a doctor when she grew up because, his voice broke, because she wanted to help people the way doctors had helped her mother during her illness. Now she'll never get that chance, because someone put a bullet in her chest to punish me. I'm so sorry, Mr. Romano. Call me Luca. And you, Elena Maria Carter, you're coming home with me. I need to know everything about Julia's last moments. Every word she said, every detail. You're the only person who can give me that. One of his men, the one who'd called him boss, stepped forward. Sir, bringing her to the house. Is that wise? We don't know anything about her. She could be. She was with my daughter when she died. She spoke to her in Italian, held her hand, and gave her comfort when I couldn't be there. She's coming home with us. That's final. And that was how I ended up in a black SUV with tinted windows, sitting beside a grieving Mafia boss, driving to an unknown location in the middle of the night. This was either the most compassionate thing I'd ever done, or the stupidest. Time would tell which. The house, if you could call it that, was more like an estate. It was massive, gated, with security that looked military grade. We passed through 2 checkpoints before reaching the main residence, a sprawling mansion that screamed old money and dangerous power. Inside, the decor was elegant but lived in. There were family photos on the walls, Luca with 2 children, a beautiful woman who must have been his late wife. There was evidence of kids everywhere, toys in a basket, small shoes by a side table. Children's artwork hung on what was clearly very expensive wallpaper. My son Marco is 13, Luca said, following my gaze. He's upstairs. I had to tell him about his sister before I left to see her. I don't know how to. He stopped, his voice breaking. How do you tell a child their little sister is dead? How do you explain that the world is so cruel? You tell them the truth with as much compassion as possible, and you let them grieve however they need to. There's no right way to lose someone. He led me to a study with dark wood and leather furniture, the kind of room designed for serious conversations. Sit, please. Can I get you something? Coffee, water, something stronger? Water is fine, thank you. One of his men brought water for both of us, then stationed himself outside the door. Clearly, I wasn't leaving until Luca had the information he wanted. Tell me everything, Luca said, settling into the chair across from me. From the moment she arrived in the ER until the end. Every detail. I walked him through it. The paramedics bringing her in, the organized chaos of trying to save her, the moment I realized she was speaking Italian. I told him the words she'd said, the expression on her face, and how she'd looked at me when I responded in Italian. There was relief that someone understood her. She wasn't in pain at the end, I said gently. The medications we'd given her, combined with the blood loss she was fading, but peacefully. She held my hand and tried to smile when I promised to tell you about the flowers. Her last expression was peaceful, Luca. She wasn't afraid. That was partially a lie. She had been afraid, terrified actually. But what father needed to hear that his daughter died in fear? Some truths were too cruel to share. The rose was for her mother's grave, Luca said, his voice hollow. My wife, Isabella, died 2 years ago from cancer. Julia had been asking to visit the cemetery to bring flowers. I kept saying it was too dangerous, that my enemies might be watching, that we'd go together when it was safe. She must have snuck out and gone by herself. And they were waiting. They knew killing her would destroy me more than killing me would. Who did this? A rival family, the Castellanos. We've been in conflict for months, over territory, over operations. They hit my daughter to send a message. His expression went cold and dangerous. It worked. I received their message, and now they'll receive mine. The way he said it, calm, certain, and absolutely lethal, made me realize Dr. Martinez had been right. Luca Romano wasn't just grieving. He was planning retaliation. Violence, probably death. Luca, I understand you're angry, but more violence won't bring Julia back. It'll just create more grief for other families. You don't understand my world. In my world, showing weakness gets you killed. Not responding to this, not making them pay for what they did, would invite more attacks. My son would be next. My entire family would be targets. I don't have the luxury of mercy. Revenge won't make the pain less. It'll just create more pain. Maybe. But it's the only language people in my world understand. He stood and moved to the window. You must think I'm a monster. A criminal who deserves what happened. I think you're a father who lost his daughter in the most horrible way possible. I don't know you well enough to judge anything else about you. I'm not a good man, Elena. I've done terrible things. Hurt people. Broken laws. And built an empire on violence and fear. But I loved my wife. I love my children. Everything I've done, all of it, was to protect them, provide for them, and give them a life of safety and comfort. And it meant nothing. I couldn't protect Julia from my enemies. I failed her. You didn't fail her. The people who shot her, they're the ones who failed basic humanity. You're just a father trying to make sense of senseless violence. He turned back to me, and there was something raw in his expression. Why are you being kind to me? You know what I am. Dr. Martinez told you. I saw you talking to him. He warned you, yet you came anyway. And now you're sitting here offering me compassion when you should be calling the police. Because your daughter died in my arms, and I made her a promise. I told her I'd tell you about the flowers, that I'd make sure you knew she loved you. I'm keeping that promise. And because you're grieving and I'm a nurse, it's more than your job. You speak Italian. You understood Giulia's last words. You held her hand and comforted her when I couldn't be there. You gave her a gift at the end, someone who understood her, who made her feel less alone. That's not something I can repay. I don't want repayment. I stopped, not sure what I wanted. To go home, to help this man grieve, to understand why his daughter's death had affected me so deeply. I just want Giulia to be remembered as more than a victim of violence. She was a little girl who loved her mother enough to risk danger to bring flowers to her grave. That's what should be remembered. Will you help me remember her? The question was quiet and vulnerable. Will you tell Marco about his sister's last moments? He needs to hear it from someone who was there, who understood her. I can't find the words. Luca, I'm not family. That's an intimate conversation he should have with you. Please. You speak Italian. Giulia spoke Italian because her mother insisted on raising them bilingual. Marco will understand the significance of that, of his sister being comforted in their mother's language at the end. He needs to hear it from you. I should have said no. I should have insisted on going home and leaving this family to their private grief. But looking at Luca's desperate expression, thinking about a 13-year-old boy who just lost his little sister, I couldn't refuse. Okay, I'll talk to him. But Luca, after that, I need to go home. I have a shift tomorrow, a life to get back to. I can't stay here indefinitely. Of course, I'll have someone drive you home after you talk to Marco. And Elena, thank you. For everything. For being with Giulia, for telling me about her last moments, for agreeing to help Marco. You've given our family a gift in the worst moment of our lives. Marco was in his room, a typical teenage space with posters, gaming systems, and scattered clothes. But the boy sitting on the bed looked lost, young, and completely shattered. When Luca brought me in and explained who I was, Marco's eyes filled with tears. You were with Giulia at the end? I was. She wasn't alone, Marco. I held her hand and talked to her in Italian. She knew someone was there who understood her. What did she say? Dad said she was talking about flowers. I sat beside him on the bed, and for the next 20 minutes, I told him everything. How brave Giulia had been. How she tried to smile. How her last words were about love for him, for their father, for their mother's memory. I told him about the rose she'd wanted to put on their mother's grave, about how she'd apologized for going to the cemetery alone. She was always stubborn, Marco said, tears streaming down his face. Mom used to say Giulia got it from Dad, that once she decided to do something, nothing could stop her. I should have gone with her, should have helped her bring flowers to Mom. Maybe if I'd been there, maybe nothing. The people who did this were looking for a target. If you'd been there, you might be dead too. Or they might have chosen another time, another place. You can't blame yourself for not preventing something you had no way of knowing would happen. Dad's going to kill them. The Castellanos. He's going to start a war. Is that what you want? More violence? More death? I want my sister back. But since I can't have that, I want the people who took her to pay. Does that make me a bad person? It makes you human. Grief makes us want justice. Sometimes revenge. But Marco, your sister's last words were about love, about wanting to honor your mother's memory. Maybe the best way to honor Giulia's memory is to choose love over violence. You don't understand our world. In our family, not responding to this, Dad would look weak. We'd all be targets. He sounded just like his father, 13 years old and already fluent in the language of mob justice. I don't understand your world. You're right, but I understood your sister's last moments. And I'm telling you, she wasn't thinking about revenge or justice. She was thinking about love, about family, about flowers for her mother's grave. That's what she wanted to be remembered. Marco was quiet for a long time. Then he asked, "Will you tell me about her in Italian?" The things she said? I want to hear them in Mom's language. So I repeated everything in Italian, every word Giulia had said, in the exact phrases she'd used. And Marco cried, really cried, in a way he probably hadn't let himself with his father present. I held him while he sobbed. This boy who'd lost his mother and now his sister, who was trying so hard to be strong. When his tears finally subsided, he looked at me with redrimmed eyes. Thank you for being with her, for telling me the truth, for speaking Italian. It makes it feel like Mom was there too, somehow. Your mother would be proud of both of you, of how much you loved your sister, how hard you're trying to be strong. After leaving Marco's room, I found Luca waiting in the hallway. His expression was questioning, hopeful. He needed to cry. I gave him space to do that, and I told him everything Julia said in Italian. He wanted to hear it in his mother's language. Thank you, truly. You've given us something I didn't know we needed. Comfort from someone outside the family, outside the violence. Perspective. I should go home now. It's late and I have work tomorrow. Of course. I'll have my driver take you. He hesitated. Elena, I know this is an imposition, but would you consider coming to the funeral? It's in 3 days. I think Marco would appreciate having you there. Someone who was with Julia at the end, who understood her. Luca, I'm not family. Funerals are for family. You were the last person to hold my daughter's hand. The last person she spoke to. That makes you part of her story, part of what we're mourning. Please, just consider it. Against my better judgment, I found myself agreeing. I'll think about it. If I come, it's for Julia, not for you or your family's politics. I wouldn't expect anything else. The drive home was quiet. I was exhausted, emotionally drained, trying to process everything that had happened in the past 5 hours. A little girl had died. I'd been taken to a Mafia boss's house. I'd comforted his grieving son. And now I was somehow involved in a world I knew nothing about. When I finally got home at 2 a.m., I collapsed into bed but couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Julia's face, heard her small voice speaking Italian, asking me to tell her father about the flowers. I'd kept my promise. I'd told him. But somehow, I didn't think this was over. Luca Romano wasn't the kind of man who let people walk away once they entered his orbit. And I'd just become part of his daughter's story in a way that connected us permanently. 3 days later, I stood at the back of a Catholic church, watching hundreds of people mourn an 8-year-old girl. The funeral was elaborate, traditional, and filled with enough flowers to stock a florist shop. Through it all, Luca stood at the front with Marco beside him, both of them frozen in grief. When Luca spoke, delivering a eulogy in Italian and English, he mentioned me. A stranger held my daughter's hand at the end. She spoke to her in her mother's language and gave her comfort when I couldn't be there. That kindness, from someone who owed us nothing, is something I'll never forget. Afterwards, as people were leaving, Luca found me. You came. I promised Julia I'd tell her father her last words. I keep my promises. Walk with me. It wasn't a request. We walked through the cemetery, the same cemetery where Julia had been trying to bring flowers to her mother's grave. Luca led me to a new grave, fresh dirt, an elaborate headstone already in place. Beside it was another grave, for Isabella Romano, his wife. They're together now, Luca said quietly. My girls are together. That's a beautiful thought. Elena, I need to ask you something. It's going to sound insane, possibly inappropriate, but I'm asking anyway. What? Come work for me. Be part of my household. Marco needs someone. Someone outside the family, who understands grief, who speaks Italian, who can help him process this. I'll pay you whatever you want, more than the hospital pays. Just help us. Help him, please. I stared at him. You want me to quit my job and work for a Mafia family? I want you to help a grieving boy who just lost his sister. The rest, my work, my family's business, that's separate. You'd be there for Marco. That's all. It was insane. Completely insane. But looking at Luca's desperate expression, thinking about Marco crying in my arms, I found myself actually considering it. Let me think about it. Give me a few days. Take all the time you need. But Elena, please say yes. My son needs you. Our family needs you. And I think Julia would want you to say yes too. That was emotional manipulation, and he knew it. But it also might be true. I spent 3 days wrestling with Luca's offer. It was insane, leaving a stable hospital job to work for a Mafia family. Every time I tried to talk myself out of the decision, Marco's profound grief came to mind. I remembered him crying in my arms, and his desperate need for someone to help him process his sister's loss. You're seriously considering this? My best friend Sarah asked when I told her. Working for a mob boss, Elena? That's not just changing jobs. That's entering a criminal world. I wouldn't be entering anything. I'd be helping a grieving teenager. That's all. That's how it starts. Then you're in too deep to leave. These people, they don't let you walk away once you're involved. I'm not involved. I'm just helping a kid who lost his sister. How is that different from being a pediatric nurse? Because pediatric patients don't have fathers who kill people for a living. She had a point. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was supposed to do this, that Julia's death had connected me to this family for a reason, and walking away now would be abandoning that purpose. On the 4th day, I called Luca. I'll do it. 3-month trial period. If it's not working, I leave. And I wanted in writing that I'm there as Marco's grief counselor and tutor, nothing more. I'm not involved in family business. Agreed. Thank you, Elena. You have no idea what this means to us. I gave my notice at the hospital. Dr. Martinez was disappointed but understanding. If you need an out, if this situation becomes dangerous, you call me immediately. I'll help you get somewhere safe. It's not going to be dangerous. I'm just helping a kid cope with grief. Keep telling yourself that. But be careful. Luca Romano isn't someone to underestimate. The Romano estate became my workplace. I had my own room, a guest suite that was nicer than my entire apartment. My job was officially household staff, vague enough to not raise questions but specific in practice. I spent time with Marco, helped him with schoolwork, talked through his grief, and provided the kind of emotional support a 13-year-old boy desperately needed. The first week was awkward. Marco was polite but distant, clearly not sure what to make of having a grief counselor living in his house. We'd have stilted conversations over meals and uncomfortable silences when I tried to get him to open up. This isn't working, I told Luca after 5 days. He doesn't trust me. He probably sees me as a stranger his father hired rather than someone who genuinely cares. Give it time. He's not used to opening up to people outside the family. But he will. I've seen how he looks at you. Like you're a connection to Julia he doesn't want to lose. Luca was right. The breakthrough came a week later when Marco found me in the library reading in Italian, one of my grandmother's old books I'd brought from home. You read Italian? He asked, surprised. Fluently. My grandmother made sure of it. She said language was culture, and culture was identity. I should know where I came from. Mom said the same thing. She'd make us read Italian books, watch Italian films, and speak only Italian at dinner. Dad would complain he couldn't follow the conversation. His Italian is terrible. So your Italian is good? Better than good. Mom made sure of it. He sat beside me. What are you reading? La Storia, by Elsa Moranti. It's about World War II in Rome. My grandmother loved this book. Said it reminded her of her mother's stories about the war. Mom loved that book too. She tried to get me to read it, but I said it was too old, too long. Now I wish I'd read it with her. You could read it now, in her memory. I could read it with you if you want. We could discuss it, talk about what she might have thought about different parts. For the first time since Julia's death, Marco smiled. I'd like that. And Elena, thank you for not giving up on me, even though I've been kind of a jerk. You haven't been a yerk. You've been grieving. There's a difference. Reading together became our routine. Every evening after dinner, we'd sit in the library and read La Storia in Italian, discussing themes, characters, and what Marco's mother might have said about different passages. And slowly, Marco started opening up. About Julia, about his mother, about the grief that was consuming him. I keep expecting her to burst into my room, he said one evening. Julia, I mean. She was always doing that. Barging in without knocking, demanding I play with her or help with homework. It drove me crazy. Now, the silence drives me crazier. That's normal. The absence of someone is louder than their presence sometimes. Do you think Mom and Julia are together, like Dad said at the funeral? I think if there's an afterlife, your mother would definitely be there waiting for Julia. And she'd probably have strong opinions about the flowers Julia tried to bring to her grave. Marco laughed. Actually laughed. It was the first time I'd heard that sound since his sister's death. Mom always had opinions. She'd definitely have thoughts about Julia getting shot because she snuck out to bring roses. What do you think she'd say? That she was proud Julia was brave enough to honor her memory, but angry that Dad's enemies turned that bravery into a death sentence. And probably furious with Dad for not protecting her better, even though it wasn't his fault. Have you talked to your father about this? About how you feel? Dad doesn't talk about feelings. He just gets cold, shuts down, and plans revenge. I heard him on the phone yesterday talking about the Castellanos. He's going to kill them. All of them. How does that make you feel? Like I should be happy. Like I should want revenge too. But mostly, I just feel tired and sad. Like more death won't make anything better. That's very mature of you. Most people your age would want blood for blood. Yeah. Well, I've seen enough of Dad's world to know that revenge just creates more revenge. The Castellanos killed Julia. Dad kills them. Their family retaliates. Someone else dies. It never ends. Unless someone chooses to stop. Have you told your father that? He wouldn't listen. He thinks I'm too young to understand the family business. The way things have to be done. Maybe you understand better than he does. Sometimes youth brings clarity that experience loses. 2 months into my time with the Romano family, I'd settled into a routine. Mornings were spent helping Marco with his online schooling. Luca had pulled him from regular school after Julia's death, worried about security. Afternoons were for Italian reading and discussion. Evenings were usually spent with the whole family at meals, where I'd gradually become less a staff member and more a fixture at the table. Luca was different at family dinners than I'd expected. He was less the cold mob boss and more a father trying desperately to keep his remaining child safe and happy. He'd ask about Marco's day, make terrible jokes, and try to create normality in a situation that was anything but normal. "Elena taught me a new Italian curse word today," Marco announced one evening, grinning. "I did not. I was reading dialogue from the book, and you asked what it meant. That's not teaching." "What word?" Luca asked, amused. "I'm not repeating it at the dinner table," I said firmly. "It's very impolite," which means it was a good one. "Marco, what was it?" "Elena says if I use it, she'll stop our reading sessions, so I'm not telling." "Smart kid." Elena's right. Some language isn't appropriate for dinner conversation. But Luca was smiling, the first genuine smile I'd seen from him in weeks. After dinner, Luca asked me to join him in his study. "You've been good for Marco. Better than I hoped. He's laughing again, talking about the future. That's because of you. It's because he's resilient and has a good support system. I'm just facilitating the healing he was going to do anyway. Don't diminish what you've done. You've given him something I couldn't, a safe space to grieve. Someone who's not part of the family politics, who's not involved in the business. He trusts you. I'm glad. But Luca, we need to talk about what happens after the 3-month trial period ends. Marco's doing better, but he's not healed. Grief doesn't have a timeline. I know, which is why I'm hoping you'll stay permanently. Not just as Marco's tutor, but as part of the household. We need you, Elena. I can't stay permanently. This was always temporary. Why? What's pulling you back to your old life? The hospital you left? The apartment you barely stayed in? Elena, you have a purpose here. Marco needs you. We need you." The way he said "I" before correcting to "we" made something flutter in my chest. I'd been trying not to notice how attractive Luca was, how his presence affected me, how our late-night conversations after Marco went to bed had become the highlight of my day. This isn't my world. I'm an outsider playing house with a family I don't really belong to. You belong here more than you realize. Marco sees you as family. So do I. Luca, I know it's complicated. I know my life, my work, makes everything difficult. But Elena, you've become essential to us. To me. And I'm asking, begging if necessary, please stay. The vulnerability in his voice was unexpected. This powerful, dangerous man, reduced to begging me not to leave. It was affecting me in ways I didn't want to examine. I'll think about it. That's all I can promise right now. That's enough for now. The decision became more complicated 2 weeks later when Marco asked me directly, "Are you leaving when your 3 months are up?" "I don't know yet." "Why?" "Because I don't want you to. You're the only person who gets it, who understands what I lost. Dad tries, but he's grieving too, and he shows it by being cold and planning revenge. You let me be sad and angry and confused without trying to fix it. Your father loves you very much. He's just showing it the only way he knows how. I know, but I need what you give me too. The space to feel everything. The Italian reading that connects me to Mom. The conversations about Julia that don't end with Dad looking like he's going to break. Please, don't leave. Stay permanently." How could I say no to that? How could I walk away from a kid who needed me, who'd lost so much, who was asking me so directly to stay? "I'll stay," I heard myself say, "if your father agrees to my terms. I want a real contract, a real salary, and clear boundaries around what I am and am not involved in. Can you accept that?" "I can accept anything, if it means you're staying." That evening, I told Luca my decision. His relief was palpable. "Thank you, truly. You have no idea how much this means. I have terms. I want them in writing. Name them, whatever you want. Double what you're paying me now. A real employment contract with a clear job description. And most importantly, I'm not involved in family business. Ever. I don't want to know details. Don't want to be in the room when decisions are made. I'm here for Marco. Nothing else." "Agreed. I'll have the papers drawn up tomorrow." He moved closer. "Elena, I want you to know, having you here, seeing you with Marco, watching you bring life back into this house, it's meant everything to me. You've given us a gift I can never repay. You don't need to repay anything. I'm just doing my job. Is that all this is? A job?" The question hung between us, loaded with implication, because it wasn't just a job anymore, and we both knew it. Somewhere in the past 2 months, I'd become emotionally invested in this family, in Marco's healing, in Luca's rare smiles, in the life we were building together. "It's what it needs to be," I said carefully, "for everyone's sake. And if I wanted it to be more, Then we'd be having a very different conversation. One I'm not ready for. When you're ready, let me know. Because, Elena, you've become more than Marco's tutor. More than a staff member. You've become essential. And I'd like to explore what that means. 6 months after Giulia's death, the Romano household had found a new rhythm. Marco was back in regular school, a private academy with extensive security. He'd made friends, joined the debate team, and was reading Italian literature voluntarily. The grief was still there, but it had become part of him rather than consuming him. And Luca had kept his promise about not involving me in family business. I lived in the house, worked with Marco, and shared meals with the family, but remained carefully separate from the darker aspects of Luca's life. Until the night everything changed. I was in the library reading when I heard shouting. Luca's voice, angry and urgent, speaking rapid Italian on the phone. Then footsteps, and Marco being rushed down the hallway by one of the security team. Luca burst into the library. We need to leave now. Grab only essentials. We have 5 minutes. What's happening? The Castellanos. They're making a move. This house isn't safe. I have a secure location prepared. We're going there until I handle this situation. Luca, I'm not family. I don't need to evacuate with you. You live in my house. You take care of my son. That makes you a target. You're coming with us. That's not negotiable. Within 10 minutes, we were in an armored SUV, speeding toward an undisclosed location. Marco sat beside me, pale but trying to stay calm. Luca was in the front, on his phone, coordinating with his security team in rapid Italian. Is this about revenge for Giulia? Marco asked quietly. Probably. The Castellanos think I've been planning retaliation. They're trying to hit first. Have you been planning retaliation, Marco? Not now. No. I want to know. Have you been planning to kill them? Is that why they're attacking us? Luca was quiet for a long moment. Yes. I've been planning it. They killed your sister. They don't get to walk away from that. So this is your fault. They're attacking because you won't let it go. Marco, I started, but Luca cut me off. He's right. This is my fault. I should have been more careful. Should have anticipated they'd strike first. I'm sorry, son. I'm sorry you're in danger because of my choices. We arrived at a fortified apartment building. It was the same building where I'd been living when I first met the Romanos. I realized Luca had apparently bought the entire top floor and converted it into a secure safe house. We'll stay here until my team confirms the threat is neutralized, Luca explained. It shouldn't be more than a few days. But it wasn't a few days. It was 2 weeks of lockdown. Of armed guards outside the door, of tense phone calls and Luca disappearing for hours to handle business situations he wouldn't explain. Marco and I maintained our routine as best we could, with Italian reading, schoolwork, and conversations. But the tension was affecting him. He was angry at his father, scared of the situation, and frustrated by the captivity. This is what your world looks like, I told Luca one evening after Marco had gone to bed. This is what you do to the people you love. Lock them up for their own safety. Disrupt their lives because of your business decisions. I'm protecting them. Protecting you. Would you rather I let the Castellanos grab Marco and use him against me? I'd rather you find a way out of this life. Transition to legitimate business. Stop the cycle of violence. For Marco's sake. You think I haven't tried? You think this is the life I want for my son? Elena, I inherited this world. I'm trying to make it safer, more legitimate, but that takes time. And in the meantime, I do what I have to do to keep my family alive. At what cost? Marco is terrified. He's watching you become exactly what he fears: cold, violent, consumed by revenge. Is that the father you want to be? It's the father I have to be. In my world, showing weakness gets people killed. I don't have the luxury of mercy or forgiveness. Then maybe you need to leave your world. Choose your son over your business. Choose life over death. It's not that simple. It is exactly that simple. You choose every day. You choose. And right now, you're choosing violence over your son's well-being. When does that change? He looked at me with something like pain. You don't understand what you're asking. Walking away from this life, it's not possible. There's no retirement from being a mob boss. I'm in until I'm dead or in prison. Then maybe Marco deserves a father who's willing to risk prison to give him a normal life. The conversation ended there, but my words seemed to affect Luca. Over the next few days, I noticed him having quieter conversations with his advisors, making calls that sounded different, less about retaliation and more about negotiation. On day 12 of the lockdown, Luca gathered Marco and me in the living room. I've made a decision. The Castellano situation has been resolved. Not through violence, but through negotiation. I gave them territory in exchange for peace. No more attacks. No more retaliation. It's over. You didn't kill them? Marco asked, clearly surprised. No, I chose a different path. One that means we can go home safely, without more blood being spilled. Why? What changed? Luca looked at me. Someone made me realize that the cycle of violence only ends when someone chooses to stop. I'm choosing to stop. For you, Marco. And for the future I want to build. Instead of the past I keep repeating. Marco hugged his father, the first physical affection I'd seen between them since Giulia's death. And I felt something shift in my chest, watching Luca hold his son and choose peace over revenge. After Marco went to bed, Luca found me on the balcony. You were right about everything. I was letting my need for revenge consume me, and it was hurting Marco, hurting our family. So I made a different choice. I'm proud of you. That took courage. It took you challenging me, making me see that I had options beyond violence. Elena, you've changed us, changed me. You've made me want to be better than I was. You were always capable of being better. You just needed someone to remind you. I need you. Not just as Marco's tutor or as household staff. I need you as my partner. Someone who keeps me human, who reminds me what's important. Elena, I'm in love with you. The confession hung in the air between us. I'd known on some level that feelings were developing, but hearing him say it directly, that was different. Luca, I can't. We can't. This is impossible. Why? Because of who I am, what I do. Because you're my employer? Because I'm here for Marco? Because mixing personal and professional would be a disaster? Or it would be the best decision either of us ever made? Elena, I see how you look at me. I see the connection between us. Don't pretend it's not there. Even if there are feelings, acting on them would be wrong. Marco needs stability, not his father dating his tutor. And I need to know this is real, not just proximity and intensity making us think we feel more than we do. Then let's find out. Give me a chance. Give us a chance. We'll take it slow. Keep it separate from Marco until we're sure. But Elena, please don't walk away from this because you're scared. I'm terrified of caring too much, of getting hurt, of disrupting Marco's healing because of personal feelings. I'm terrified too, but I'm more terrified of letting you walk away without trying. Please, just say you'll think about it. I'll think about it. But Luca, if we do this, if we try, it has to be real. Not just convenience or loneliness. Actual love, actual partnership. Can you promise me that? I promise. You're not convenient or a distraction. You're the woman who gave my daughter comfort when she died, who brought my son back from grief, who made me want to be a better man. That's not convenience. That's everything. 2 weeks after returning home, Luca asked me on an actual date. Dinner at an elegant restaurant, just the two of us, while Marco stayed home with security. This feels strange, I said as we sat down. Being out with you like this. Strange good or strange bad? Strange, like I'm not sure if this is a date or a business dinner with my employer. Definitely a date. And Elena, you're not just an employee anymore. You're family. Marco sees you that way. I see you that way. This is me asking you to be more than family. To be my partner. Your partner in what? Life? Business? I'm still not clear on what you're asking. All of it. I want you in my life, Elena. Fully. As my girlfriend. Eventually my wife if things progress that way. As Marco's mother figure, he already sees you as that. As my partner in building a better life for our family. Our family. You say that like I'm already part of it. You are part of it. You have been since the day you held my daughter's hand and gave her comfort. That connected us, Elena. Giulia brought you to us, and I believe she'd want us to build something good from that tragedy. Using Giulia to convince me is emotional manipulation. It's also the truth. My daughter's last moments brought you into our lives. Don't you think that means something? Don't you think she'd want her death to lead to life, to love, to something beautiful? He was right, and I hated that he was right. Because I did believe Giulia's death had connected us for a reason. And I did have feelings for Luca. I had been fighting them for months, trying to maintain professional boundaries. If we do this, we go slow. We don't tell Marco until we're sure. And we keep clear boundaries between personal and professional. Agreed. Though I should warn you, I'm Italian. We don't do slow very well. But I'll try for you. Over the next 3 months, Luca and I dated carefully and slowly, keeping it separate from my work with Marco. We had dinners out, quiet evenings after Marco went to bed, and stolen moments of conversation and connection. And I fell in love with him. Not the mob boss, not my employer, but the man underneath. The father who'd chosen peace over revenge, the grieving husband who still loved his late wife, the person trying desperately to build something better for his son. I need to tell Marco, Luca said one evening, about us. He deserves to know. Are you sure he's ready? His mother hasn't been gone that long. He might feel like you're replacing her. I'm not replacing anyone. Isabella will always be Marco's mother, always be the woman I built a life with. But she's gone, and I'm still here, still alive, still capable of loving someone new. Marco needs to understand that. We told him together over dinner, with carefully chosen words about how relationships evolve and people can love more than once. Marco's reaction was unexpected. I know. I've known for weeks. You guys aren't subtle. You knew? I asked, shocked. Please. You think I didn't notice Dad smiling more? Or you blushing whenever he walked into the room? I'm 13, not blind. And you're okay with it? Luca asked carefully. I mean, it's weird. But also, Elena's been here for me when I needed her. She's helped you be better, Dad. Less angry, more present. Why wouldn't I be okay with that? He paused. Just don't have a wedding without me. I'm definitely invited to that. A year after Julia's death, we held a memorial service. Just family and close friends gathering at her grave to remember her, to honor her memory, and to acknowledge the hole she'd left in all our lives. Marco spoke, reading a letter he'd written to his sister in Italian, telling her about the past year, about the family, about me. You brought her to us, Julia. I believe that. You made sure we'd have someone to help us heal. Thank you for that gift. I placed roses on her grave, the flowers she'd been trying to bring to her mother's grave when she died. And I whispered in Italian, I kept my promise. I told your father about the flowers. I stayed to help your brother. I hope you're at peace. Luca held my hand through the entire service, with Marco on his other side. The three of us were united in grief and healing, and the strange family we'd become. Afterwards, at the house, Luca's sister, Isabella's sister technically, pulled me aside. I wanted to thank you for what you've done for my nephews. Marco needed someone like you. And Luca, he's been alone too long. You've brought light back into this family. I just helped where I could. You did more than help. You saved them. Both of them. From grief, from violence, from the darkness that was consuming them. Don't underestimate what that means. 2 years after Julia's death, Luca proposed. Not with grand gestures or public declarations, but quietly, in the library where Marco and I had first bonded over Italian literature. I want to marry you, build a life together officially, and give Marco the stable family he deserves. Elena, will you be my wife? Yes, but Luca, I need you to understand. I'm not replacing Isabella. I'm not trying to be Marco's mother or Julia's memory. I'm just your you. That's all I'm asking you to be. Elena, who held my daughter's hand. Elena, who saved my son from drowning in grief. Elena, who made me want to be better than I was. That's who I'm marrying. Not a replacement for anyone. Just you. The wedding was small and intimate, held in the same church where we'd mourned Julia. Marco was the best man, walking me down the aisle with pride. And when Luca and I exchanged vows in Italian, at Marco's insistence, it felt like the culmination of something that had started with tragedy and transformed into hope. I promised to love you, honor you, and build a life worthy of the gift you've given us. You came into our lives through pain, but you've brought us joy. That's the magic of love. It transforms suffering into beauty. My vows were equally emotional. I promised to be your partner, your equal, your home. I promised to love Marco as if he were my own. And I promised to honor Julia's memory by living fully, loving completely, and never taking a single day for granted. When we kissed as husband and wife, Marco started clapping, soon joined by everyone present. And I knew, without a doubt, that this was where I was meant to be. 5 years after Julia's death, our family expanded. We had a daughter, Sophia, born with dark hair and the same intense eyes as her father. Marco was 18 now, in college, but he came home for the birth, holding his baby sister with gentle reverence. She looks like Julia, he said softly. Same eyes, same determined expression, even as a newborn. Do you think that's okay? That we named her Sophia, but she reminds us of Julia? I think it's perfect. Julia brought you to us. Now we have Sophia because of that. It's like Julia's still taking care of us, even though she's gone. Luca was a different father this time around. More present, more handsome, less consumed by business. He'd been gradually transitioning his operations to legitimate enterprises, keeping his promise to build a better life for his family. No regrets? I asked one evening. We were watching Sophia sleep in her crib, her tiny chest rising and falling with each breath. About what? Leaving that life. The power. Everything you were before. The only regret I have is not doing it sooner. Elena, you gave me something I thought I'd lost when Isabella died. A future worth building. A reason to change. I'll never regret that. 10 years after Julia's death, Marco graduated from law school. He'd chosen to become a prosecutor, deliberately choosing the other side of his father's old world, fighting against organized crime rather than being part of it. Are you disappointed? He asked Luca at the graduation dinner. That I'm becoming everything you used to oppose? I'm proud. Proud that you're strong enough to choose your own path, brave enough to stand against the life I used to lead. That takes courage. You're the one who showed me it was possible. You showed me that people can change, that family legacy doesn't have to define you. I'm following your example, Dad. 15 years after Julia's death, we took Sophia, now 10, to visit her sister's grave. It was the first time she was old enough to really understand, to process that she had a sister she'd never met who'd brought our family together. Tell me about her, Sophia asked, sitting beside Julia's headstone. Tell me about my sister. So Marco and Luca and I took turns sharing stories about Julia's stubbornness, her love of flowers, her determination to honor her mother's memory, about how she'd spoken Italian in her last moments, and about how those words had connected me to this family. She saved all of us, Marco said. Even though she died, she saved us. She brought Elena to us when we needed her most. That's a pretty amazing gift from a little sister. I wish I could have met her, Sophia said quietly. You carry her with you, I told her. In your name, in the stories we tell, in the love we share because of her. Julia is part of our family forever. Death doesn't change that. 20 years after Julia's death, the Romano family gathered to celebrate Marco's wedding. He'd found someone good, a fellow lawyer who understood his complicated family history and loved him anyway. She reminds me of you, Luca said, watching Marco with his fiancée. Strong, brave, willing to see past the surface. You gave him that example, showed him what a good partnership looks like. We gave him that example. Together. I like the sound of that. After 20 years, we're still together, still building this life. Any regrets? Only that Julia isn't here to see how beautiful her brother's life turned out, how beautiful our lives turned out. But I think she knows. Wherever she is, I think she knows what her last words set in motion. At the reception, Sophia, now 20, gave a toast. My brother found love because he learned from our parents what real partnership looks like. My parents found each other because my sister, who I never got to meet, brought them together in the worst moment of their lives. That's the magic of family. We save each other, even in death. So here's to Julia, who's here in spirit, and to Marco and his beautiful bride. May your love be as strong as the love that built our family. Everyone raised their glasses, and I felt Luca's hand find mine under the table. 20 years of choosing each other, of building something beautiful from tragedy, of honoring Julia's memory by living fully. That night, back home, Luca and I sat in the library, the same library where we'd first started building our relationship, where I'd taught Marco to grieve, where so many important moments had happened. Do you ever think about how it started? Luca asked. How a little girl's last words in Italian brought you into our lives. I think about it constantly. How random it seemed, being the nurse who happened to speak Italian, who happened to be there when Julia needed someone to understand her. But I don't think it was random. I think it was exactly what was supposed to happen. Fate. Purpose. Julia needed someone to comfort her at the end. Marco needed someone to help him grieve. You needed someone to show you that change was possible. And I needed to find where I belonged. We all needed each other. Julia just made sure we found each other. I like that interpretation. It makes her death mean something, instead of just being senseless violence. Her death meant everything. It changed all of us, made us better. That's not nothing, Luca. That's a legacy. 25 years after Julia's death, Sophia had her own daughter. She named her Julia, a decision she made with Marco's blessing. It feels right, Sophia explained, bringing her name back into the family, making sure she's never forgotten. Holding baby Julia, seeing Marco's tears of joy, and watching Luca become a grandfather, it felt like completing a circle, like honoring the little girl who died too young by celebrating new life, new hope, new generations. What would you tell her? Sophia asked me one day. If you could talk to Julia, the first one, what would you say? Thank you. Thank you for trusting me with your last words. Thank you for bringing me to your family. Thank you for giving me a purpose I didn't know I needed. And thank you for showing me that even in the worst moments, love can grow. That's what you gave us, the space for love to grow. Do you think she'd be happy about how everything turned out? I think she'd be proud. Proud of her brother becoming a prosecutor. Proud of her father choosing peace over violence. Proud of the family we built. Yes, I think she'd be very happy. 30 years after Julia's death, Luca and I were grandparents to 4 grandchildren. Marco had 2 kids, Sophia had 2, and all of them knew the story of their Aunt Julia, who they'd never met, who'd brought their family together. "Tell us again," Marco's oldest asked one evening. All the grandchildren were gathered, wanting the story they'd heard a dozen times but never tired of. So I told them about a little girl who'd been shot, who'd spoken Italian in her last moments, who'd wanted her father to know about flowers for her mother's grave, about how I'd been the nurse who understood her, who'd held her hand, who'd promised to deliver her message, about how that promise had brought me to their grandfather, to their Uncle Marco, to the family that had become my everything. "And that's why we always bring flowers to Aunt Julia's grave," Sophia's daughter, young Julia, said. "Because flowers brought the family together." Exactly. Flowers and love. And the courage to hold someone's hand when they're scared. That's what family is. That evening, as Luca and I watched our grandchildren play, I thought about the journey from that terrible night in the emergency room to this beautiful moment. About how Julia's last words, translated in Italian, had given me a family I didn't know I needed. "No regrets?" Luca asked, reading my thoughts as he often did after 30 years together. "Not a single one. This life, this family, it's everything. And it started with me doing my job, holding a scared little girl's hand and promising to deliver her message. Who knew that promise would change my entire life? I believe that she brought you to us deliberately, made sure we'd find each other. Maybe. Or maybe we just got lucky. Either way, I'm grateful for her. For you. For all of this. I'm grateful too. For a nurse who spoke Italian. For a daughter brave enough to visit her mother's grave. For a tragedy that somehow transformed into beauty. This is the life I never knew I wanted. And it's perfect." He was right. It was perfect. Built on pain. Yes. Started with death? Absolutely. But transformed through love. Through choice. Through the courage to keep living even after loss. That was Julia's legacy. Not the violence that killed her, but the love that grew from her last words. And 30 years later, that love was still growing, and would keep growing, generation after generation, remembering the little girl whose last words, translated by a stranger, had built a family. 35 years after Julia's death, I stood in the same emergency room where I'd met the Romano family. I was back for the first time since leaving my nursing career, here for a charity event honoring pediatric trauma nurses because I'd become passionate about supporting them. Mrs. Romano, the current ER director, approached me. "I wanted to thank you personally for your foundation's donation. The Julia Romano Memorial Fund has transformed our pediatric trauma program. It's important work. Every child deserves comfort at the end, no matter the circumstances. That's what Julia taught me. The story of how you met your husband. It's legendary around here. The nurse who spoke Italian and ended up marrying into the family. Some of the younger staff don't believe it's real. It's real. All of it. Sometimes life gives you purposes you don't expect, in ways you couldn't predict. I was just a nurse doing my job, but that job changed my entire life. Later at the charity gala, I gave a speech about Julia, about pediatric trauma care, about the importance of language and connection in medicine. And I saw in the audience the young nurses who were where I'd been 35 years ago. Dedicated, exhausted, trying to save lives in impossible circumstances. "You never know which patient will change your life," I told them. "Which moment will define your purpose." For me, it was a little girl speaking Italian, asking me to deliver a message to her father. That moment brought me my family, my husband, my entire future. Stay open to those moments. They'll find you when you least expect them. That evening, back home, the entire family gathered for dinner. It had become a tradition. Sunday dinners with everyone present, no exceptions unless absolutely necessary. Marco and his wife, Sophia and her husband, all 6 grandchildren, and even some extended family members who'd become part of our orbit. "Tell us a story, Nana," one of the younger grandchildren asked me. They all called me Nana, Italian for grandmother, a title I'd earned through love rather than blood. "What story do you want to hear?" "The story of how you and Nano met. But tell it in Italian, the way Aunt Julia would have heard it." So I told the story in Italian, the language that had connected me to this family, that had started everything. And the children, who'd been learning Italian from birth, listened with rapt attention, understanding every word. When I finished, young Julia, now 15, said, "Someday I want to be a nurse like you were, Nana. I want to help people the way you helped our family. That's a beautiful dream. But remember, being a nurse isn't just about medical care. It's about seeing people, understanding them, connecting with them in their worst moments." That's what I did for the first Julia. I saw her, understood her, and connected with her. That's the gift you give as a nurse. Will you teach me Italian medical terms so I'll be ready? Of course. We'll start tomorrow. Luca squeezed my hand under the table, and I saw the pride in his eyes. Pride in our granddaughter choosing medicine, pride in the family we'd built, pride in the legacy that started with tragedy and transformed into purpose. After dinner, when the house had emptied and it was just Luca and me, we walked to the library, our sanctuary, our thinking space, the room where so many important conversations had happened over the decades. 35 years, Luca said, since the worst night of my life became the beginning of the best part of my life. That's the contradiction I've never quite reconciled. You don't have to reconcile it. Both things are true. Julia's death was devastating, and it brought us together. Tragedy and beauty existing simultaneously. That's life. Do you think she knew? That her last words would bring you to us? I think she was a scared little girl trying to tell her father she loved him. But maybe there was something more. Maybe she sensed that speaking Italian would connect her to someone who'd help her family. I'll never know for sure, but I like believing she had a hand in bringing us together. I believe it too, because the alternative, that it was all random, meaningless coincidence, that's too painful. I need to believe Julia's death served a purpose, that she brought you to us deliberately. Her death served a purpose. It changed you, changed Marco, created the foundation that helps other families, and brought me to you. That's not meaningless, Luca. That's a legacy. 40 years after Julia's death, Marco became a judge. His distinguished career fighting organized crime led to a significant appointment. He was named to the federal bench. This high-profile position would have been utterly unthinkable for Luca Romano's son, given their family history. But Luca had spent decades transitioning to legitimate business, carefully making amends for his complicated past. At his investiture ceremony, Marco gave a speech that brought me to tears. I am here today because my father showed me that people genuinely possess the capacity for change. My stepmother also demonstrated that love indeed holds the remarkable power to heal profound wounds. Furthermore, my sister, who tragically died too young, brought our entire family together during its darkest moment. Every decision I make from this bench will honor their legacy, the legacy of choosing justice over revenge, love over hate, and hope over despair. Afterwards, Luca said quietly, Isabella would be so proud. Both our girls would be so proud. Julia, for starting this journey, and you, for helping us complete it. This is your achievement, not mine. You're the one who changed. You made me want to change. That's the same thing. 45 years after Julia's death, young Julia graduated from nursing school. She specialized in pediatric trauma, specifically multilingual care for immigrant children. She'd taken her great-aunt's legacy and expanded it, helping children who came from families that didn't speak English, who needed someone to understand them in their worst moments. You inspired this, she told me at her graduation. The story of how you understood the first Julia, how you connected with her through language. I wanted to do that for other children, make sure they're never alone, never without someone who understands them. Your great-aunt would be so proud. This is exactly the kind of legacy she'd want. Her death leading to life, to care, to connection for other children. Will you teach me what you said to her? The exact Italian words? I want to use them when I work with scared children. I want to carry on what you started. So I taught her the phrases I'd use to comfort Julia, the gentle Italian words that had made a dying child feel less alone. And watching my granddaughter memorize them, preparing to use them with other scared children, I felt the circle complete itself once more. 50 years after Julia's death, we held a memorial service. It wasn't sad or mournful, but celebratory, honoring 50 years of the legacy she'd created, the family she'd brought together, the changes her death had set in motion. The Julia Romano Memorial Fund had helped thousands of families. Marco's career as a federal judge had helped reform the justice system. Young Julia's work in pediatric trauma care had comforted countless immigrant children. And the Romano family, once synonymous with organized crime, was now known for philanthropy, justice, and service. 50 years ago, I lost my daughter, Luca said at the memorial. He was 85 now, still sharp but showing his age. It was the worst moment of my life. But from that tragedy came everything good I've experienced since. My wife Elena, who held Julia's hand and brought light back into our lives. The change in my life that made me worthy of Elena's love. The family we built together. The legacy that honors Julia's memory. I would give anything to have her back. But since I can't, I'm grateful for what her life and her death gave us. That's the strange math of grief, loss, and gain existing together. After the memorial, Marco approached me privately. I need to tell you something. Something I've never said directly. You saved my life. When Julia died, I was drowning, angry, confused. headed toward the same violent path Dad had walked. But you showed me another way. You taught me that grief doesn't have to become rage, that loss can transform into purpose. Without you, I'd have become exactly what I feared. Instead, I became someone I'm proud of. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. You saved yourself, Marco. I just held space for you to do it. That's exactly what you did for Julia, too. You held space for her, gave her comfort, made her last moments less terrifying. You're good at that, holding space for people in their worst moments. It's your gift. That evening, lying in bed beside Luca, after 50 years of marriage, 50 years of choosing each other, I reflected on the journey. Do you remember the first words you said to me? I asked. In the hospital, when you came to see Julia? Is she alive? I was so desperate, so terrified. And you had to tell me no. She didn't make it. I hated you in that moment. I hated that you were the messenger of the worst news I'd ever received. And now you're the messenger of the best news I ever received. That life continues after loss. That love is possible after death. That people can change, can grow, can build something beautiful from broken pieces. You brought me that message through your presence, your patience, your love. That's a better message than anything I could have imagined. 55 years after Julia's death, Luca passed away peacefully in his sleep. He was 90, had lived a full life, and had seen his family flourish. At his funeral, Marco spoke about his father's transformation, from mob boss to devoted husband, to proud grandfather, to philanthropist. My father wasn't a perfect man. He made mistakes, hurt people, and lived a life he wasn't proud of for too long. But he changed. He chose to be better. And that choice, that fundamental decision to transform, that's his real legacy. Not the empire he built, but the man he became. The father who chose peace over violence. The husband who loved fiercely and completely. The grandfather who told stories and gave wisdom and made us all want to be better. After the funeral, I stood at Luca's grave, beside Julia's. They were together now, the daughter who died too young and the father who'd spent the rest of his life honoring her memory. Thank you, I said to both of them, for bringing me to this family, for showing me what love looks like in all its forms, for giving me a purpose I didn't know I needed. I hope I honored your gift. I hope I was worthy of it. 60 years after Julia's death, I was 91 years old. Most of my time was spent with my family Marco and his grandchildren, Sophia and hers, and young Julia, who now ran the entire pediatric trauma program at Metropolitan Hospital. Nana, young Julia asked me one afternoon, do you ever regret it? Leaving your nursing career, marrying into a complicated family, choosing a path that was so different from what you'd planned? Not for a single moment. Yes, I left nursing, but I found a different kind of healing. Helping your Uncle Marco grieve, helping your Nono change, helping build a family. That was its own form of nursing, just on a smaller, more intimate scale. And the first Julia, do you think she'd be happy with how everything turned out? I think she'd be amazed. An entire foundation in her name, a great niece who carries on her legacy, a family transformed by her death. Yes, I think she'd be very happy. More than happy, I think she'd be proud. A few months later, I passed away in my sleep, peacefully, surrounded by photos of my family, with Marco holding my hand. He'd been there for me, the way I'd been there for his sister 60 years ago, offering comfort at the end. At my funeral, young Julia gave the eulogy. My Nana used to tell us about the night she met our family, about how she spoke Italian to a dying child, made a promise to deliver a message, and that promise changed her entire life. She always said it was Julia, the first Julia, who brought her to us, that my great-aunt, even in death, was taking care of the family. I believe that. I believe Julia knew what she was doing when she spoke Italian to a stranger. She was giving her family the greatest gift, someone who would love them, heal them, and show them what real strength looks like. Nana kept her promise to Julia. She delivered the message, and she stayed. For 60 years, she stayed. That's love. That's legacy. That's what it means to keep a promise. They buried me beside Luca, near Julia. 3 people connected by tragedy, transformed by love, reunited in death. And the family we'd built, 4 generations of Romano children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, carried on the legacy. A legacy that started with a little girl's last words, translated by a stranger, in a language that connected us all. Italian words that became the foundation of a family, the beginning of a love story, the transformation of tragedy into purpose. 60 years, 1 promise, 1 family, and a love that proved that even in our darkest moments, we can find light. We just have to be brave enough to hold someone's hand and promise to deliver their message.